Hi, welcome back to Examining Life, a life that's worth living. My name is Amanda. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Wisdom Wednesday. First, I want to thank everyone who has subscribed, and if you haven't already, please go ahead and click the red rectangle to subscribe. I also want to thank my patrons. Thank you very much for your donations. I greatly appreciate your support. Today's quote is from John Locke's An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, Book 2. Quote, "Consciousness is the perception of what passes in a man's own mind. Can another man perceive that I am conscious of anything, when I perceive it not myself? No man's knowledge here can go beyond his experience." End quote. So I thought this was a very interesting quote on consciousness and perception and acquiring knowledge. First, I will give a brief background on Locke's theory of knowledge. Locke was an empiricist, which is the sect of epistemology, the philosophy of knowledge, in which knowledge is gained through sensory perceptions. He believed that humans are born as a blank slate, and knowledge is acquired thereafter through experience. And he rejects the idea of innate ideas. So now I am going to break down each sentence individually from this quote. The first sentence was, "Consciousness is the perception of what passes in a man's own mind." This first sentence seems to make sense. Any given perception that one experiences allows one to be conscious of that information. However, what this leaves out is the validity of the content of those perceptions. For example, it is possible to perceive something that is not factually true. If you perceive something that is not true, does it count as knowledge or even consciousness? You may be conscious that you perceive it, but it seems in this case you don't necessarily know whether the content is true or false. But it is true that the perception still exists. Therefore, I think there is a limitation to the extent of which experience yields knowledge. The question that follows this sentence is an interesting one. Can another man perceive that I am conscious of anything when I perceive it not myself? There seems to be a contradiction in this question, because he first says that I am conscious of anything, but then he says, when I perceive it not myself. How can he be conscious of something and not perceive it at the same time? However, I may not be reading this correctly, so if there are any Locke experts out there, please feel free to leave me a comment below to clarify this question. And here I'm also going to go into a little bit of a further analysis trying to disprove this question, based on my understanding of it. I do think that other people can be conscious of something about another person without that person even being conscious of it themselves. For example, say you are in a busy public space and you sit down to people watch. You observe various behaviors. Some of these behaviors will be conscious, such as walking. The person walking is conscious of the fact that he or she is walking. But some behaviors or body language are done subconsciously, such as potentially one's posture. Furthermore, the observer can make potential assumptions based on one's body language, such as his or her comfort level. There is a possibility that the person doing the action or holds a certain body language is conscious that he or she is doing so, and may be doing so intentionally. And of course, as an observer, there isn't necessarily a way to know what the person is or isn't conscious of. So for the sake of this example, let's assume that the person is maybe slouching and isn't necessarily aware he or she is slouching. It might just be a subconscious way of leaning, but is not necessarily aware that he or she is doing so. However, as an observer, of course, you can see and perceive that he or she is slouching. Furthermore, the observer can make potential assumptions based on one's body language, such as one's comfort level. There are two possibilities. The person doing the action or body language is conscious and intentionally doing so, or he or she is doing it subconsciously and is not aware that he or she is doing so. And of course, as an observer, there is not necessarily a way to know what that person is or isn't conscious of. Furthermore, there also isn't really a way to confirm whether or not the assumptions made about a person based on what you see them do are truthful, such as assuming that one is uncomfortable based on his or her posture. Maybe they are uncomfortable, maybe they aren't. If the assumption that the other person is in fact uncomfortable, but he or she is not aware of such discomfort, then this would prove Locke's question wrong. But how can we prove that the observed person is uncomfortable? And how do we know that is an accurate assumption based on a simple observation, our perception? Even if you were to ask this person, "Are you comfortable?" you would have to rely on him or her giving you a truthful answer, because it's very possible that they will lie. Therefore, how can we trust our perceptions and believe our experiences allow us to know anything? And now onto the third sentence. No man's knowledge here can go beyond his experience. One cannot know what he has not experienced, and one can only know what he has experienced. As previously laid out, it may not be possible to trust your perceptions about any given experience and take those perceptions as fact, i.e., knowledge. On the other hand, is it possible to acquire knowledge without experience? For example, take a basic math equation, 5 plus 2 equals 7. We take this as fact. 5 plus 2 equals 7. But in order to gain this knowledge, one must have certain experiences, such as first learning the numbers, learning how to count, and learning the concept of addition. It wouldn't be possible to know that 5 plus 2 equals 7 if you didn't have those experiences first. Only with having these experiences could one then acquire the knowledge needed to do the math problem 5 plus 2 equals 7. However, even if one has not had the experiences necessary to do this simple math problem, the math still holds true regardless of whether or not one has experienced it. So the knowledge is still there, but it just happens to not be that person's knowledge. But just because one person hasn't perceived it or hasn't experienced the necessary skills or perceptions in order to do this math problem, that doesn't mean that the math either doesn't exist, because it does exist regardless of whether or not they are aware of it. But it also doesn't mean that it's not true, because the math is still true regardless of whether or not that person has experienced it. Thank you so much for watching this week's Wisdom Wednesday. What are your thoughts on consciousness? Can other people be conscious about something about you that you are not conscious of yourself? Let me know in the comments below. I will be discussing additional theories of knowledge in the future, so be sure to stay tuned for those. And please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Stay tuned every Wednesday. Thank you. Happy travels. Bye.